Right now I am standing in front of a Porsche Type 181, which most people would actually go, no, that's a Volkswagen thing. And usually they'd be right, except that this is kind of a unique thing, literally. Back in the 70s, most people know that Porsche and Volkswagen were much more tied together when it came to marketing and you know, the dealerships were one building. You had a bunch of Beetles on one side of the building, and over on the other side of the building you had a bunch of, you know, 911s and 356s. That's just the way it was back in the day. In the 70s in particular, they really started working together on developing engines and developing cars together, and it was really the marketing department in Stuttgart that decided what a car became at the end of the day. For instance, everybody knows the Porsche 914 in America. That started out, that was supposed to be a Volkswagen. And it wasn't until they realized that the Deutschmark, in comparison to the American dollar, they would had to have sold the 914 as a Volkswagen at the same price point as like a 911, which would have been a pretty big challenge for Volkswagens to sell that high a price, given that Beetles were a couple of $1,000s. So the marketing department said, let's go ahead and sell it as a Porsche. And they actually sold it as a Porsche Volkswagen in Europe.
Ach, der Rami hat mich angephont und er hat gesagt, wir brauchen dich für einen Film, hat überhaupt nichts anderes gesagt, nur dass die wollen mich für einen Film machen. Die doofen Amerikanische, die wollen mir nur zu sprechen, ich brauche überhaupt nichts was sagen, die wollen nur, dass ich Deutsch spreche. Ich denke, es ist für Porsche, aber ich weiß überhaupt nichts.
At the same time, in the 70s, in America, cars were selling really well, gas was cheap, and off-road vehicles were a big thing. So what they were thinking is like, well, why don't we make this vehicle and we'll compete directly with the Jeep CJ. I mean, it's brilliant. It's going to be less money. We've already got it developed. It's based off of a vehicle from World War II, just like the CJ was. You know, it really did make a lot of sense.
Well, Faszination das ist ganz falsch. Das soll die Faszination sein, aber die in Englisch ist die und die wollen das nicht machen. Und die denken alle, die doofen Amerikanische, das ist es Faszination von Tod zu sein. Ach.
At the same time all this is going on, in America, in a town called Auburn Valley, Nevada, which is outside of Las Vegas, there was one of these Volkswagen Porsche dealerships. The owner of that particular dealership, he had spent time in Germany during World War II, like a lot of guys did overseas, and he knew what the Kugelwagen was, and he always loved it. And when he heard that Porsche was developing this thing, he was like, sign me up. I want to be one of the first ones that has this vehicle. You know, they're out in the desert, there's a lot of off-roading going on out there. He was like, yeah, this is going to be great. Sound familiar with, you know, I mean, now Porsche sells Cayennes and Macans. How many of those do they sell?
Ich bin hier für 2 Stunden, 2. Und die haben überhaupt nichts gesagt, was ich hier machen muss. Über alles haben die keine Trinken mehr gebracht. Diese dumme Amerikanische, die wissen überhaupt nichts von Porsche. Die sollten nur ein Fahrrad treten in die Straße. Warum bin ich denn hier?
So they put that same engine that they developed for the 914, they put it in the Type 181. They changed the suspension. It has a 5-speed transmission. They gave it a really nice, you know, gauge package and all this extra stuff, thinking that they'd be able to sell that in America and everybody would want it. They put it all together and they announced that they're going to do this to all the Porsche Volkswagen dealers in America. And the Porsche dealers are like, are you kidding? What? No way. So it kind of got the kibosh from America. But this is one of the first times where it was really America that kind of drove what the marketing was going to do. So all that said, we all know that the Volkswagen Thing came out in 1973, was released in America as the Volkswagen Thing. But before they got to that point, and while all this stuff was going on, they actually built 5 Porsche Type 181s. And this is the only one we know of in the world.
Ja, ich denke, die wollen mir nur, dass ich ein bisschen Deutsch spreche. Die wissen überhaupt nicht, was die machen. Aber was soll ich sagen? Die sind doof. Diese doofe Leute. Die machen, dass die Porsche ist. Das Automobil ist keine Porsche, aber die machen, dass es ein Porsche. Die sind so doof.
when our good friend back in Auburn Valley, Nevada, when he heard that they weren't going to do it, he made such a stink. He was so upset that he demanded the factory at least send him one. So as a gesture from Porsche to our guy in Nevada, said, all right, we'll give you one. And so it made its way to Nevada. 40 years later, I'm making commercials for what is now just a Porsche dealership. It's not a Volkswagen dealership anymore. The current owner, it was his grandfather who was the one who was so excited about this car. The family has an amazing collection of collectible cars, and they have this huge warehouse full of these things. I saw under a tarp the silhouette that was pretty unmistakable, and we went over there and I pulled the tarp off of it expecting to see a thing, and I saw the Porsche on the side, and I saw some of the other things, and I lifted the hood and it was different underneath, and I'm like, what in the world is this? And that's when I heard the story. The Porsche brand is like an onion. When you start to peel away the layers, you get one layer and you find some amazing story about some rare car. And then you get deeper and deeper. And every time you find an amazing story like this and you go, you know, if you were making a movie trying to make something up, you couldn't make something like this up if you tried.